Yo, Shortbox Nation, this is Botter, and I'm here to tell you right now that con season starts early this year with the return of Northeast Florida's premier anime, comic book, and sci-fi event, Collective Con. That's right, Northeast Florida's largest pop culture convention returns for its 10th year on March 8th through the 10th at the Prime Osborne Center in Jacksonville, Florida. 10 years of Collective Con, they're pulling all the stops out to make sure this is a can't-miss event. And the guest list they got going, don't even get me started on the guest list. I mean, they've got A-list celebrity guests and voice actors from some of your favorite movies, anime, and video games like Elijah Wood and Sean Ashton, Ray Park, Trisha Helfer, Ross Marquand, Max Middleman, and Bo-Katan herself will be there, Katie Sackhoff. Tell me what other convention is giving you the opportunity to meet Frodo and Sam from Lord of the Rings, Darth Maul, and One Punch Man all under the same roof. Only at Collective Con. And if you're looking to get some of your favorite comics signed, or if you want to get an original sketch from some of the best comic artists in the world, well, you're in luck, because there'll be plenty of comic and creator guests there, like DC comic artist extraordinaire Clay Mann, Harvey Award-nominated illustrator John Taylor Christopher, Marvel and DC cover artist Chris Stevens, and acclaimed Star Wars author Timothy Zahn. They'll all be at Collective Con this year. And if you're looking to bring the family, or if you want to make a weekend out of it, you're in luck, because there'll be so much going on at Collective Con that weekend in the form of vendors, fan panels, video game tournaments, cosplay contests, after parties, and a bunch of fan events. You can purchase single and 3-day weekend passes now using the link in this episode's show notes, or by going to collectivecon.com to book your tickets and hotel. Buy your tickets now, and I'll see you at Collective Con, March 8th through the 10th. Now let's start the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Shortbox, Season 6, yeah.
Yo, Shortbox Nation. Yo, guess what? Bonus episode. Y'all thought y'all were just getting one new episode this week? Nah, come on, man.
Boy. You guys were wrong as hell.
Oh, man. And some of you longtime listeners, you know, the loyal, the dedicated, the true believers of the Shortbox Nation may recognize that voice I got here on with me, man. That sultry, down-to-earth, cool as a polar bear's toenail.
You know who it is, man. It's Warren, Bart of Darkness. What's up?
Dang, with the self-intro. I like that.
You already know.
Yo, Shortbox Nation, so check this out. Last week on our Items Spotlight episode, which if you haven't listened by now, shame on you. Go ahead and pause, give that a listen. But I went ahead and hinted at a podcast project I was doing with my good friend here, Warren, a.k.a. the Bart of Darkness. Like I said, some of you might remember him from episode 259, which is we recorded about a year ago.
Man. So
this is kind of a cool little anniversary, like an anniversary announcement.
I can't believe it's already been a year, but at the same time, the last 3 months have felt like 3 years. So I mean,
damn, well said.
You know, with that said, I'm not that surprised. Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is that episode 259, Bart of Darkness, which it was your podcast debut. And now here we are, a year later, celebrating the year anniversary of that, still one of our best played episodes. You're about to launch your own podcast.
I'm doing it. I'm finally jumping in.
Simpsons is greater than, right? That's
Simpsons
the name of it.
is greater than. Coming
out the gate, dude, what was the catalyst to venture into the world, the unforgiving, cold, harsh world of podcasting, and what inspired you to move away from your regular kind of Instagram dedicated content?
Over the last year, as we just talked about, I've been on Shortbox a few times, and in doing so, I was like, man, if I could ever find an excuse, or if I could ever find a reason to podcast, I think I would jump in. So, I had some opportunities come my way in the form of getting some people on board from the show to help me with some various raffles and things that I did a couple months back, money that I donated to some bail and relief funds around the country. And in doing so, I got to speak to a few people. In just sort of talking with them, I was like, hey, would you ever want to do like an Instagram live with me? I think we could do like a fun little thing for the fans, and, maybe people would enjoy that. When they said yes, and when that happened, after doing 1-2 episodes, I was like, why not see what else this can be?
Mm-hmm.
I think in talking to various people that were like, hey, I haven't had a chance to watch. Have you considered making these a podcast? And, getting feedback in that way and talking to you about it as well, it just seems sort of like a natural move to see where else I could take this thing.
So there is a saying about like good deeds that I'll probably butcher if I try to recall it. But it is cool to know that your good deed. I mean, you had your heart in the right place. You wanted to raise money for these bail funds. All these opportunities came out from like just your interest in wanting to, do something good for other people. So, I mean, one, that is awesome that you kind of
thank you
happen to find this calling. Two, the podcast name, Simpsons is Greater Than, which is a pretty unique name. I think it definitely stands out. Where'd the name come from?
So, obviously when I started looking into making this a podcast or taking it beyond just the Instagram live videos, out the gate, I thought to myself, well, I can't just call this the Bart of Darkness podcast because, if you go back and listen to my first episode on the Short Box, I said that the name actually means nothing. It's the first episode of my favorite season, and I just really liked the way it looked typed out when I was looking for a screen name. So the name sort of means nothing, and that doesn't make me love it any less, but I didn't want to just call the podcast Bart of Darkness. So, you look at other things that are just self-referential or they're a very direct reference to the show, and I sort of wanted to approach this from an area which is where my Instagram comes from anyway. It's my fandom. It's the fact that I think The Simpsons is the greatest show ever, and I think that it's influenced some of the greatest shows ever, and I think that it's, tied to most of the greatest things ever. So in coming up with a name, I sort of just thought, like, what says it all in one phrase? And I think leaving it open to Simpsons is greater than what? It's greater than this show. It's greater than that show. So I like that it ends in a way that you can sort of answer your own question, or you can look at it as if it literally had a greater than symbol, meaning that it is the top dog, if you know what I mean.
I guess, is there anything greater than Simpsons in your book?
No. Nothing.
So I want to kind of give some more context because right now I know that this episode is spiking, baby. This is already probably best played, but we've got our Short Box listeners, and then we've got, of course, like your fans and your listeners, future listeners chiming in and wondering what exactly is a podcast like project, or what are you guys working on? And the plan is that while you're getting your channel and your feed set up, we're going to do the honors of premiering your first 2 pilot episodes here on our channel. And then, by the end of August, I think is kind of the timeline we're working towards. You'll have the Simpsons Greater Than channel where people can subscribe on most podcast apps. But I think that's important that, you're taking your time and getting it set up and done properly, getting, episodes and interviews in the bank. So that way when you do launch, it's like, you've got a good amount of offering for anyone interested in listening.
Well, I want to add to that and say that, the Short Box is, for the last year has been a big supporter of what I'm doing with my content. And, as a big fan of you guys and as good friends with you as well, I think it's sort of just fun to partner up in that way and sort of make this a fun little project. You guys premiere my first 2 episodes and I get to just sort of hop on here and have a little bit more time with the Short Box. So I think it's just a good excuse to sort of partner up and do something fun.
What episodes do you have in the bank so far? Because I will say you are going about it the right way. You're recording episodes. You're doing all the kind of work in the back. So that way when you launch, it's seamless. You've got offerings for people and whatnot. What have you worked on so far?
So off the rip, I've done 2 interviews on IG Live. Yardley Smith, Bill Oakley were the first 2 that I did.
And real quick, just because I always try to act as if there might be someone tuning in that has no idea what we're talking about.
Right.
Who is Yardley Smith? Who is Bill Oakley? Who are some of these names?
So Yardley Smith is the voice of Lisa Simpson. She's been with the show, obviously, since the jump from the shorts on Tracy Ullman, 1987. Bill Oakley is a writer who joined at the end of the 3rd season, and he wrote through season 6, and he show ran along with Josh Weinstein for 7 and 8. And he also worked on Mission Hill. He wrote for Portlandia. Bill Oakley has a great list of credits. So anyone who is interested in funny television, which I'm sure all of you are, anything that Bill Oakley has touched is hilarious. I also just did an episode with Al Jean, which is one of the original. He's one of the first 2 writers hired for The Simpsons. He's been involved in so many projects, from Alf to Carson, to The Simpsons, to The Critic, back to The Simpsons. So, I mean, he truly is he's one of the hardest working people ever in television. So if you just look up a list of his episodes and things he's worked on, you'll be blown away. And I have a lot more that I'm recording over the next couple weeks. I'm going to have the guys from the Talking Simpsons podcast on. I'm going to have, I've talked to, I've got a crazy list of people that said they're down to do it that I'm still working out scheduling with. So, without spoiling too much or without, making any promises that I can't live up to, I think I've got some really crazy stuff lined up. I'm really pumped to share it with everybody.
Yeah, man, I can't tell you how good of a position you are for like a brand new podcast. Well, I mean, let's just say, even if you weren't a Simpsons podcast, just to be a podcast with those type of interviews like under your belt, not even released yet, like, and that's how you're going to enter like the podcast world and your debut, man. That's some solid stuff, dude. I think it just is a testament to your personality, your charm, and also your respect for the fandom. And that's something that I was talking to Corey Torgerson. Shout out to Corey, by the way.
Yeah, shout out to Corey for sure.
Fantastic photographer. He came over last week. He was taking some shots of us while we were recording, and I had a chance to talk to him. I told him, I'm helping Warren out for a podcast. And in his words, and Corey, hopefully I'm not doing your words any injustice, but he said something to the effect of like, man, I remember when he came on the show, I just don't really care for The Simpsons like that, but it was something about his level of fandom and how much respect he had for The Simpsons that I just could not stop listening, and I've been a fan of him ever since. So I'm looking forward to the podcast.
Man, I mean, it means a lot to me to hear things like that, and I just want to say, I couldn't be doing this without you and the Short Box because, there's so much that I don't understand about this process, whether it be equipment or the best way to push this or start my actual feed and things like that. So if I didn't have you to sort of help me get this process started and get things going, it would not have been nearly as smooth for me. So, while we're talking about me, I also want to talk about you because
come on now.
It's a lot. It says a lot about you that you wanted to step up and help me in that way. And, obviously we're friends and I believe friends do that, but you've gone above and beyond just helping me with edits and, giving me some feedback, something to sort of chew on about my own process. So, that means a lot, man. You're a real friend.
I appreciate that, man. And I will, that'll be the soundbite I keep using.
Well, I'll be sure to never do that again, so you better make it count.
My interest in helping with the podcast is that there is a lot of really good content out there. Like a lot of friends that produce good content that happen to come across like their own interviews. And I feel like podcasting is just a good channel to have for any content creator that dabbles in interviews or things that can translate to good audio. So I was excited to help out, man, because it's like, well, you've already done a majority of the legwork. I mean, you can take the audio from these Zoom interviews and these Instagram interviews and put it out there for people to absorb it in as well. So I wanted to ask more so about your goals and aspirations for the podcast and Simpsons is Greater Than. Where do you see it? Like, what are your hopes or visions for it in a year or maybe 5 years? What do you hope to like obtain? Considering that, I mean, you just interviewed Yardley Smith, Bill Oakley, and Al Jean. It's like, where else do you go from here?
Well, as far as my goal, and this sort of comes back to, anyone who heard my first episode where I talked about my collection, my Instagram, this podcast is very much, I look at it in a similar sense where I don't really know where it's going to take me. When I started the Instagram, when I started sharing my collection, I had no idea that it would be a thing that people actually responded to or, saw themselves in and wanted to interact with so much. As far as the podcast, I look at it in a similar sense, but also I just want to push myself to make something that's not like everything else. So, when I decided that, I'm going to expand this beyond just people from The Simpsons, I'm going to, look to people that are influenced by it. I'm going to look at the cultural impact of a show like The Simpsons. And that way I want every interview and every conversation that I have on the show to just sort of feel like, hey, we're sitting in a room, you're listening to a couple friends talk about The Simpsons, and you're like, yeah, I feel that. That was sort of like my experience. So a year from now, I hope that I'm better at it. I hope that I've sort of honed in on what I want to do. And I hope that, I've come up with even more ways and more content that I can provide because, if I can give someone an experience in a very crowded field that they don't already get, then, that'll be very special to me.
Warren, I think I think we have talked a good bit about why the show is going to be successful and whatnot. I want to go ahead and give the listeners, both Shortbox listeners and future, Simpsons greater than listeners, a taste of what to expect. I want to play a clip from this first pilot episode that will be premiering August 12th. That's a Wednesday.
Awesome.
It is your interview with Yardley Smith. Let's go ahead and play that real quick, and then we'll have some more words.
Let's do it.
Here's one. How much influence would you say that you have had over Lisa over the years? And on the flip side, how much influence has she had on you, would you say?
Yo, this is Botter. Sorry for interrupting this episode, but I'll keep it brief. I wanted to let you know about a massive sale we have going on over at the Shortbox store on all of our merchandise and apparel. That's theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com. You can now save 20% off your entire order using the discount code YOO, Y-O-O. So if you've been waiting for the right time to finally buy that gauntlet snapback, or if you ever wanted to buy any of the shirts you see me wear on the podcast, well, now's your chance to get them for a steal. We still have a few sizes left of everything, but they won't last long, and once they're gone, they are gone. And then I mentioned that all of our apparel is screen printed on high quality material. None of that heat transfer or direct to garment stuff. Our shirts are some of the most comfortable ones you'll ever wear, and the hats look even better in person. So wear your support for the Shortbox Nation proudly, knowing that you're going to look damn good doing it. Get to theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com as soon as you can, and don't forget to use that discount code YOO, Y-O-O, to save 20% off your entire order. All of this information can be found in this episode's show notes if you want to get there faster. Thanks for not pressing fast forward. Now back to the show.
It's a good question. I can say, speaking for myself, that Lisa Simpson has had a tremendous effect on me. Like I said this on Twitter actually last week. Somebody had asked me if I thought of Lisa sort of separately from myself, or and the long and the short of it was, yes, I do. And then once in a while, I sort of remind myself that I'm also 33 1/3% of the creation of that wonderful little being, right?
Absolutely.
But so I admire, so when I look at her, when I see her on television, more than when I read her words on the page, I'm so struck by her resilience and her optimism and her kindness and her compassion. And even if she gets impatient, then she self-corrects, she's sort of all the best parts of a human being, I feel. As far as my having any influence on Lisa, I do, there must be some, because I feel so deeply connected to her.
Right.
There isn't, in some ways, it's not like playing a character. In some ways, it's like getting a chance to sort of step inside a heart and a mind that feels very familiar.
Right.
But I've also heard that Lisa Simpson really is all of the writers. So they're working out all of their therapy hours through Lisa Simpson. I'm like, thanks.
all their frustrations with with everyday life.
Because they were always, even growing up, they were the smartest kids in the room. They
Sure.
often say, like, oh, I didn't have that many friends. I was bullied. I didn't know where I fit in. And that's all of the things that Lisa Simpson is.
Okay, so that was a clip from the pilot episode, once again premiering August 12th here on Shortbox podcast feed. That was Yardley Smith, voice of Lisa Simpson. What was going through your mind interviewing Yardley Smith?
I really can't remember what was going through my mind, because when we first started talking in the interview, from the moment it started, she just had such a warm way about her. She's very friendly. She's very kind. She made it very easy for me in that sense. And I've sort of joked since then that I couldn't really think too much about it, or I probably would have screwed it up. You know what I mean? I had to just sort of push through. And I was just thinking the whole time, like, I can't believe I'm talking to the voice of a character, arguably my favorite character ever, but also someone that I find so sweet and interesting, on their own. And it was special to get to talk to her. It was special to get to hear her genuine responses to these questions. And, I don't know if she was humoring me to some extent, but it was fantastic.
Have you ever interacted or met anyone that's worked on The Simpsons?
So I've had interactions with some people. I've spoken back and forth with some writers. I was able to meet Mike Reese a couple years ago at a convention, which is actually Al Jean's writing partner, co-showrunner at one point. So, I've had some small interactions. And one thing that I should mention in this, and this actually played a large part in, I think, where this is going, was at this recent Comic-Con, which was done all online, Comic-Con at home. I'm sure most of you listeners checked it out. In the Simpsons panel, which, like all the others, was on Zoom, I was lucky enough to get invited to be a part of that. And, Al Jean, David Silverman, Mike B. Anderson, Carolyn Omine, Yardley Smith, all these big names, Matt Selman, all these super awesome people from The Simpsons. And I think that experience is part of the reason that I was like, hey, if I can find a way to talk to these people and give myself a reason to sort of sit down and get to know them, then that sounds like a really fun project. And, nothing that I've done in the past as far as my interactions did I expect would get me to where I am now.
The interviews that you've secured so far between Yardley Smith, Bill Oakley, and Al Jean, have you learned anything new as far as maybe Simpsons trivia you didn't know about, or just anything about them personally?
Yeah. So, there's actually, being a huge dork, there's some of it that I did know. But I will say in the Bill Oakley interview, especially, there was a lot of sort of insight into the way he looked at the show during his time there. That was, maybe not what you expect, or you think like, oh, this must've been crazy. Right. And he's like, well, it actually wasn't that crazy because here's why. And I think more so than learning new things, I think you get a different perspective that really not really changes the way you look at the show or the things that go on behind the scenes, but it just sort of takes you another layer down into the world of it, right? So like you're seeing sort of what they do, how they perceive it. And you would think to some people that might actually make it weird, or it might change the process, but to me, it just heightens it.
You're not going into uncharted territories. In regards to podcasts and Simpsons, I understand that there's Talking Simpsons.
Talking Simpsons, great podcast.
Any other ones that come to mind?
There's a great one called Round Springfield. There's a great one called Four Finger Discount. And there's a handful of other ones. I've listened to several, and there was nothing that I didn't like about them, other than the fact that they sort of do things similar to Talking Simpsons, and I'm just a day one.
So what space do you think you'll be occupying with Simpsons is Greater Than podcast? What do you have to offer? What's unique about your voice, do you think?
I think what will set me apart, or at least, bring something new to the table, is mostly that a lot of the podcasts that exist about The Simpsons are mostly talking about episodes. They're mostly breaking down things within the show. And I want Simpsons is Greater Than to almost be more of a, like I said, like friends getting together and talking about why The Simpsons is so awesome. So I want to hear from people that say, before I got into music, I watched The Simpsons a lot as a kid, and it really made me want to write comedy. It really made me want to do this or do that. And that sort of led me down a path that got me into music. I want to know how a childhood around The Simpsons sort of birthed these creative people in some way. And obviously not everyone that loves The Simpsons went on to do, something high profile, but I want to know how The Simpsons played into the daily life of some of these people that went on to do really cool things. And, beyond that, talking to people from the show, I want to learn things and learn about that person in a way that maybe you don't hear from other podcasts.
Dude, I can't wait until I mean I've been fortunate enough, kind of acting as a pseudo producer on this and listening back to the episodes and helping kind of fine tune them and things. I can say that the interviews that you've got lined up are solid. Your charisma shines through. Your fandom shines through. I know I learned a lot just from that. I mean, that Al Jean episode in that interview. I mean, some of his points on The Simpsons and even like Futurama and his finding out he's a big freaking Marvel fan.
Oh yeah,
man, that was fantastic. I know
Al
that
rules, man.
I know that your fans, I know our listeners. I think there is, like I said, a lot of synergy there, just from a podcasting perspective too, man. If you're a fan of not necessarily a particular genre, I mean, I don't think you need to be a diehard Simpsons fan to enjoy this.
Sure.
We're talking about. I mean, when you ended up telling me that Bill Oakley and Al Jean are both Harvard grads,
yes,
and it's like, damn, these Harvard grads. They are writing, one of the best like TV shows ever.
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot to glean from that.
Sure.
Just their perspective on life and how to go about things creatively. I mean, it's some good stuff from those interviews, man.
Well, let me say this too. So, I like what you said about how you don't really have to be a diehard Simpsons fan to get into the show, hopefully, and that's sort of part of my goal is. I want you to hear me and other people sort of talk in a very open way, not a way where you have to be like you don't have to know a lot to get these conversations. Like you don't have to be an expert. At least that's what I'm hoping for. And I hope that you can hear me and other people talk about how it influenced us in our daily lives or how it, informed our sense of humor. And I hope that maybe to somebody that hasn't enjoyed The Simpsons at this point in their life, they'll go, man, maybe I'm missing out. Maybe there's a lot more to the show that I don't even see at face value. So I hope that it's entertaining enough that you don't have to be familiar. That's the thing. A lot of these podcasts, they talk about episodes, they break down things. Yeah. So you got to know these things to really get on board, or maybe not to enjoy them, but to get on board. And I'm hoping that this is more like, you know what? I'm going to take your recommendation. After hearing you talk to X or talking to Y, I'm going to maybe dive in for the first time.
And that resonates with me, man, because, I mean, even our own show, here on Shortbox, that's always been our goal is to, we could easily go into, like, super inside baseball, talk about comic books and pop culture, but that's not really fun for, just a casual listener. And we just want it to be a show that anyone could just kind of put on, and regardless of your knowledge, whether you're a new fanboy or, a diehard, comic guru, you just have a good time. And those are the compliments from listeners that really resonate with me are those that have no idea about comic books, but they'll dive in. And because we're having such a good time recalling these memories or why these things are important to us, that they want to give it a shot. I'll never forget when we did our Daredevil Born Again live show. Cesar's mom was in the crowd, and she was like, after the show was done, she was like, I want to read this book. You guys really sold it. It sounded really fun, and you guys kept it at a high level enough to where I'm interested in. I think you're off to a really great start when it comes to new podcasts. I think your listeners, our listeners here at the Shortbox are going to enjoy it.
I really appreciate it.
I want to pass it to you, man, and let people feel free to go and plug in where people can follow you, where people can get up to dates on the podcast and everything. Right
on, man. Well, again, big thank you to you, Botter, for all your help with this project, and I think it says a lot about you as a guy that you wanted to step up and sort of make this so easy for me. Like, let me help you edit these down. Let me sort of give you some of my points to take away. And, that speaks not only to you, but to your podcast and what you do in the city. So huge shout out to you for that. But, if you're not familiar with me and if you want to get more familiar, I'm Bart of Darkness on Instagram. I'm at Bart of Darkness on Twitter with an _ after it. And if you want to follow the podcast directly and get the earliest updates, it's at Simpsons is Greater Than on Instagram and at Simpsons is Great on Twitter.
Damn, man, you got the Twitter handle too?
Yeah.
All right.
So, I just wanted to lock it down. So
go ahead.
you can find all the information there as far as what's coming out. And, on second thought, as far as the names I listed earlier, I might actually have Botter go through and bleep some of those because I don't even know if y'all are ready for some of the heat that I've caught. So I might real talk, ask Botter to bleep a couple of those because I want you guys to be surprised. I want you to, not see what's coming. I want you to get blindsided by what I got on deck. So, I'm really excited. and I can't fucking wait.
That is a great way to end the show in this episode, Shortbox Nation. Thank you guys so much for hanging out and sharing your most valuable commodity with us, which is your time. Thank you. It is appreciated. I will go ahead and add, if you aren't already subscribed, subscribe to this show, the Shortbox Podcast, on your favorite podcast app. We're also on Instagram and Twitter at the ShortboxJax. That's JAX. With that being said, in the meantime, listeners, stay safe, stay healthy, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. We'll have a new episode for you next week. So in the meantime, continue to make mine and yours Shortbox.
Yo, what happened to peace? Peace.